Good afternoon, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's English First Additional Language lesson. My name is Marina Seeley, and this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Sci-Bono Discovery Centre. For today's lesson, we are going to focus on paper 3, and I will be looking at 3 sections of this question paper. We are first going to take a look at the writing process, and remember that this process is not only with regards to essays, but also for the transactionals. And I will refer back and forward to all of these aspects as we go along. But let's take a look at the writing process and do a quick recap. Remember, when you get your question paper, it will be a total of 100 marks. Your question paper will be divided into 3 sections. Section A is the essay for 50, and then you will have a section B for 30, the longer transactional texts. And then the last one would be section C, the shorter transactional texts. When you get your question paper, remember to read the instructions very carefully. It will tell you exactly what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And remember that this is something that you have done for quite a number of times already. Remember the preliminary examination? It's very much the same. The only difference is you've got now a formal answer book to write in. So when you get your question paper and you've gone through the information, you get to the topics. And let's take a look at section A. The first thing you do is you browse through the topics quickly, and then you choose the best one you want to write about. You brainstorm the topic, you plan the content, you put together the paragraphs, and then you write your essay. And the final, very important step is proofread and edit your essay. Let's take a look at choosing the topic again. My suggestion is always that you choose 2 topics that you might want to write about. Remember, I said 2 topics, you go and you do a brainstorm of each. One of them will lead you to a wall. That means that you'd be stuck. You wouldn't know what to write further. That is the topic that you drop very, very quickly. And then you focus on the second one. And most probably the second one would be the one that you have a lot to say, that you have diction, words, vocabulary that you love to use, something that you take a special interest in. Take your personal skills and knowledge into consideration when you choose your topic. What do I mean by that? Each one of us has been gifted a number of gifts, so to speak. If you are good at arguing or good at doing public speaking, chances are you'd be better at writing a factual essay or an argumentative essay, as opposed to the dreamers among us who would rather write something descriptive. Or if you are good at telling stories, then you might want to write a narrative essay. Remember that your essays are not limited to a narrative or descriptive or an argumentative essay. You can incorporate different styles of writing into one essay. Make sure that you analyze the topic properly. Sometimes you go for the easiest topic, and then only to realize later that that topic had little bits and pieces that you misread, and that would lead you to a digression from the topic or a total misinterpretation of the topic, which can become a problem later on. The response to the picture question usually allows you to write a really good essay and also choose the type of essay that you are really good at. In the last couple of years, you've been working up to this point. Paper 3, final NSC examination. This is your moment to shine. Make a good decision about the topic that you would like to write about. Let's take a look at a response to a picture. Let's take a look at the advantages. Number one, it offers you a visual stimulus that might get the creative juices flowing. What do I mean by that? When you look at a picture, you interpret it from your point of view. You interpret it from your field of experience. Remember that you are an individual, and your past and your experiences and your loves and hates in life all add up to who you are. So when you look at a picture and it speaks to you, it most probably wants you to share something of yourself. You may interpret this picture any way you like. Remember, you do not have to describe everything in the picture. You may focus on parts of it only, as long as the content of your essay shows a clear link to the picture. You can adapt the essay to the type of essay that you write best. What do I mean by type of essay? That would be the narrative or descriptive, or the argumentative, or the expository essay. Remember, there should be a clear link between your picture and the content of your essay. So let's take a look at this picture. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to quickly just browse through it. I want you to focus on every part of this picture. On the surface, it might be a common picture to you. Two characters sitting with their cell phones. They're sitting in upright seats. This might be a formal building. It might be a hospital. It might be a library. Basic. But let's go a little deeper. I want you, in your moment of brainstorming, to write down what you see. Just write down a male figure, female figure. They have cell phones. They're sitting on upright chairs. They're leaning against a wall. The walls are white. Basic things. And then I want you to add descriptive words. And when we look at descriptive words, especially focus on the characters, because they're the important ones. Let's focus on the woman first. Remember when we did cartoon studies for paper 1? You focus on facial expression, you focus on body language, and you need to describe each one of those. Because the moment you describe them, you get a feel for who that character is, how he feels about the character next to him or her, or whether they have any relationship at all. When you do that, you can even name the characters. Give them random names. Give them names that might carry meaning. Then I want you to describe them. We've already started with descriptive words on their appearance. Long hair, short hair, bald. The lady's lips are pursed. They are both looking down. What are they looking down at? They're looking at their cell phones. Look at the man. He has a beard and a mustache. He seems focused on what he's reading on his cell phone. Does he show any interest in the female character? And then you can even decide what they do for a living. See the interesting games you can play by just looking at this picture. Are they related? And what is their relationship? Where is the scene situated? Does this picture reflect a problem in society? You have already touched on a narrative essay. You've touched on a descriptive essay. You have also touched on an argumentative essay. If we address a problem in society, then you most probably might also write a discursive essay. Let's take a look at the writing process in more detail. You remember I referred to brainstorming. What do we do in brainstorming? We actually write down random thoughts that come to mind when we look at this picture or we study the topic. When we brainstorm, we write down facts, whether they are related or not, it doesn't matter. You just jot them down. Then you look at those ideas in more detail. You analyze them and you decide whether they belong to one another, whether you can group them together to get an idea. After that, you arrange your ideas into paragraphs. See how the writing process sorts itself out. Remember, when we do the writing process, there is a specific structure. We have to focus on paragraphs, and each paragraph should contain a main idea that you actually elaborate on, you say more about. And then you write your essay. Very, very important. The last step in your writing process is to proofread and edit your essay. That is the moment where you identify a sentence perhaps that doesn't make sense, or you look at spelling. You look at improving your punctuation to make what you say more effective. Let's take a look at register, style, and tone. And here we refer back to paper 1 again that you've studied for and that you've already written. When we look at formal register, we use full words written out in full. We never use contractions. For example, instead of writing won't, which is informal, we will write will not, can't, cannot, it's, it is, ain't. Of course, that should never be part of your writing, because ain't isn't a word. It's actually an Americanism. So ain't could be are not or is not. Do not use language that you would use in short cell phone messages, such as WhatsApp or Snapchat or even Telegram, for that matter. Do not use slang. Slang refers to words that are used, can I call it, on the street? Gonna, I wanna, gonna, all of those, bro, that you would talk to your friends with, and you'd use that kind of language. Even when we write, we need to make sure that our register stays formal. Do not use profanities. Now, profanity is a big word for swear words, words that are not appropriate in formal writing, or in any kind of writing or speaking for that matter. I will take you back a couple of months when we did a revision on paper 3 before the preliminary examination, and I would like to refer you to the use of sentences. We talked about how important it is to vary your sentence length. In other words, you write a longer sentence, and then you can create tension by making the sentences shorter. Vary them to keep the interest of the reader. Sometimes a long sentence loses impact, and you will know if you're the guilty one for writing a full paragraph in one sentence. You start with a capital letter, you might add a comma here or there, and then a full stop at the end. Do you know what? The reader would have lost you in the second or the third line already. So very important. Try to make your sentences impactful when you write them. Too many short sentences, on the other hand, become tedious. You actually lose focus because it's like a salvo of gunfire. It becomes boring. So vary them. Let's take a look at choice of words. Remember, you are creating pictures with your words. I told you about using your senses, your sense of touch, your sense of sight, your sense of smell, your sense of hearing. Use those for your benefit in your essays. Choose your words wisely for the best effect. It's very important that you use words that actually link to your ideas and that creates that picture, rather than saying a boy walked into the room You want to show how he walks into the room. So you might want to say, he storms into the room. That is when we refer to tone as well. When you say, when he storms into the room, he might be upset, he might be anxious, he might be angry. Or if he strolls into the room, that gives you total different idea of what the character is feeling without having to explain the boy is angry or the boy is upset. Be mindful of the following: impressive words, words that are often confused, overused words, words like nice and happy and sad. Be careful not to use the same words over and over again. Let's start with impressive words first. Sometimes you use a word that you think is appropriate, that seems impressive, but it doesn't fit into the context that you are using it. Try to avoid that. Rather keep it simple. Words often confuse, like to and to, there and there, whether and whether. All those homonyms that we very often confuse. Make sure that you use the correct ones. And then, very important, spelling. Try to keep spelling as correct as possible. I know not everyone is good at spelling, but try to write as correctly as you possibly can. Let's take a look at impressive words. Your impressive words could be used, but should be used appropriately. Know what they mean and use them in the right context. Very often, these words make it difficult to understand what you want to say. It's very much like you use the word and then it doesn't make sense in the context of the sentence. So the meaning of what you have written goes to waste. And that is something we need to avoid as much as possible. Keep it simple. I refer you back to when you leave to go to a party. Make sure that there is a mirror by the door. Look at yourself and remove one thing. If you are wearing all that glitters and gold in your jewelry case, then that means it is a little too much. Keep it simple. That shows elegance. And, big word, eloquence. Eloquence means to be able to express yourself in words appropriately. Another big problem is capitalization. A capital letter is used at the beginning of every new sentence. The pronoun I is always capitalized, so pay attention to that. The names of people, places, and institutions are also written in capital letters. I know. Sometimes you want to emphasize a word and then you capitalize it. I'm sorry to say that becomes a grammatical error and you will be penalized for it. So try as much as possible to use your capital letters in the appropriate places. Never capitalize a word to emphasize it. Never capitalize a common noun in the middle of a sentence. Let's take a look at general punctuation. Yes, there are more punctuation marks than full stops and commas. A full stop is used to indicate the end of a sentence or an idea. A comma is used to indicate a pause to clarify the meaning of sentences. It might also indicate extra information. Punctuation marks give meaning to sentences and very often carry tonal value. Remember, I referred to tonal value when we talked about the choice of words. Walking in as opposed to strolling in, or rushing in, or storming in, or sauntering in to a room. If someone is angry, he might shout. An exclamation mark is often used to indicate his emotional state, and you are free to use it to show an expression of that specific character. Quotation marks are used to indicate direct speech. Very often in a narrative essay, you explain what the character says, rather than allowing the character himself to speak. Yet again, if you use direct speech too much and it becomes more like a dialogue, it becomes a problem. But remember, you are telling a story, and in your story there are characters, and those characters must show some kind of conflict or some kind of expression or some kind of emotion. And if you want to indicate that with a little pizzazz, then you would use quotation marks. Let's do a quick checker. First of all, you will look at content. Is there a clear link between the picture and my essay? Does my essay reflect planning and response to the brief? Does my essay make sense? Is my presentation neat and well organized? Have I written in paragraphs? Have I written incomplete sentences? Are my sentences varied? Remember, longer and shorter sentences. Let's move to the language. Have I spelt correctly? Have I used punctuation effectively? Or is there some space to improve on that? Have I used any contractions? Those are the things you need to check when you finish your essay. Finally, make sure that you keep to the suggested number of words. Please, we are not math teachers, so don't count every line and leave the numbers there. Make sure that you write basically the number of words. And very often, if you look at your number of words for your essay, you would go for a page and a half, perhaps, to 2 pages, depending on the size of your handwriting. Indicate the number of words neatly at the end of the essay. And if you are out 1 or 2, that is not the end of the world. You're not going to get a mark for it. The reason why we focus on a limited number of words is so that you can have focused writing. Otherwise, we tend to kind of just go on and on and on and repeat ourselves, and then the effectiveness of our writing diminishes. Make sure that you struck a line through the planning or your first draft. Speaking of which, in your final exam, you will most probably not have time to write a first draft and a final presentation. So if you do your brainstorming, your planning well, then you can write your essay from there, and then you edit neatly on your final presentation. Make sure that you wrote the corrections if you struck out any errors in your essay during the editing process. Draw a line at the end of your final essay. That is very important. Remember, you are one of thousands of candidates, and that would just make it easier for the marker to know that this is the end of your essay. Do not leave 2 lines open and then carry on the new page. Rather focus on trying to indicate that you are carrying on by starting on the last line, even if it's a next paragraph. This will help the marker to show that your essay is complete. Remember to start section B and section C on a new page. While I'm talking about that, remember that in your marking of your question papers, 3 people are going to mark your essay, your section B, your longer transactional, and section C, your shorter transactional. and each one of them would like you to start on a new page. That just helps us to see where your section starts, and it'll make the writing easier. In conclusion, remember that paper 3, especially the essay, is your marks maker. Do your best, be prepared, sleep well before you write the paper. Your brain needs to be fully awake and alert. And please go past your dragons and your energy drinks that will give you energy. They will just make you more tired. And remember, you are going to write an exam. You're not going to participate in a marathon. So have a good breakfast before you go to school, and be creative when you tackle this question paper. And please enjoy the process. And good luck. In the second part, we are going to focus on transactional texts, both the longer transactional and the shorter transactional texts. Now, when we look at the requirements for these texts, remember to always start this section, section B, and then later on section C, on a new page. You will be expected to answer only one question in section B. 4 questions will be set, at least 1 and a maximum of 2 for each of the given categories. Now let's take a look at the categories quickly. For the longer transactional texts, we have category A, which includes the friendly letter, the formal letter, and by formal letter, I mean it might be a letter of request, a letter of application, a business letter, a letter of complaint, a letter expressing sympathy, a letter to congratulate, or a letter of thanks. There might also be a curriculum vitae and a covering letter asked as a combination, which implies that you are going to have to write both the curriculum vitae as well as the covering letter. And then the formal, informal letter to the press as well as the email. In category B, you might get a review, a newspaper article, magazine article, an agenda and minutes of meeting, yet again a combination of the two. So if you do select this question, you will have to write an agenda for a meeting as well as the minutes of meeting held during the meeting. Then formal, informal reports, and then also an obituary. In category C, you might see a dialogue, a written interview, a written or formal or informal speech. Choose only one longer transactional text from the ones given. The body of your response should be between 120 and 150 words in length. Just remember that excludes the salutation and the conclusion as well as the addresses. So that is the body of the letter. Write down the number and the heading of the text you have selected. For example, question 2.1, friendly letter. It's important that you do that so that the marker knows exactly what to look out for. Your longer transactional text will be assessed according to a 30 marks rubric. Pay particular attention to format, language, and register. Remember to plan, edit, and proofread your text, clearly indicating planning and crossing it out before you submit. Let's take a look at category A, or letters. Your informal letters include a friendly letter, and a friendly letter could be a letter to your parents, to a close relatives, to friends. And in this format, the following aspects must always be included in the format. The sender's address. Who is the sender? That is you. the one writing the letter. A salutation, dear Jane, dear John, dear mom, dear dad, your salutation, and then an ending. Yours sincerely, your sincere friend, your sincere son, daughter, whatever the case may be. There are 3 related content paragraphs between the salutation and the ending. What that means is you basically have 3 paragraphs. Your introducing of the idea or the reason for writing the letter, an extension of the idea, and then your conclusion when you end your letter. Let's take a look at possible addresses. I always suggested that the learners choose one address, study that, and you use that address right throughout. That way you know that you won't make a mistake when you have to write it down. You may use a postal address, for example, P.O. Box. Look at the use of capitalization. 145. So P.O. Box comes first and then followed by the number. Pretoria, your town, your city, your suburb. You don't have to include things like extension 1 or extension 2. You can just write P.O. Box and then Pretoria and remember your code. And just an aside, if you create your own address, you don't have to find or write down a code that really exists, because nobody's going to sit there with a code book to check whether you've chosen the correct code. Followed by the date. And remember, the day, 29 November, written out, 2022. Remember that you write it out like this. You don't use the mathematical or the numeric date. If we look at the residential address, in other words, that would be your home address. It is the number first, 1439, then the name of the street or avenue or boulevard or whatever you want to call your street. The name, capital letter Mandela, capital letter street, 2 separate words. Pretoria, the code, and then the date. Same thing, 29 November, the number, the month, and then the year. In your informal letters, your salutation or your greeting might look like this. Salutation usually follows after a skipped line on the left-hand side. Remember, your address will always be on the right and trying to keep it in a block as much as possible. So you skip a line after you've written the date. On the left in the margin, you write your salutation. The most common form of greeting in a friendly letter is Dear Themba, Dear Mom. Please pay attention to the capitalization. If you address your friend, Jane, John, whatever the case may be, his name will be capitalized. But you will also see Dear Mom, Dear Dad, that would also be capitalized. Do not punctuate with a colon between dear and the name of the recipient. In other words, the person that you are writing the letter to. Somewhere along the line, somebody was taught that you put a colon there. You don't. It's Dear Themba. No punctuation in the salutation whatsoever. So there's no comma or full stop after the greeting. As a matter of fact, there is no full stop or comma even in the address. Let's take a look at the body of the letter. You leave a line open before starting the body of the letter. The body of the letter usually consists of 3 paragraphs, as I mentioned earlier. Start each paragraph against the margin and leave a line open between paragraphs. Very often you end your first paragraph in the middle of a line and then you want to start the new paragraph in the next line. That basically constitutes a single paragraph. So leave that line open and start your paragraph on the next line. Each paragraph should contain different information. State in the first paragraph the reason for writing the letter. And don't start with, "Dear John, how are you? I am fine." It's not a dialogue. And if you say, "Dear John," and you say, "Hi, how are you?" It's like they didn't see the salutation. You've already greeted them. The remaining two paragraphs expand on the reason for the letter. So paragraph 1, the reason for the letter. Paragraph 2 expands on the reason for the letter in paragraph 1. And then the concluding paragraph is usually short and rounds off the letter. Avoid ending your letter with, "Give my regards to all at home," or "Best wishes to your family," but rather include regards in the body of the letter. Let's take a look at the ending. Leave a line open after your final paragraph. Start the ending next to the left margin, left-hand side margin. The ending may take several forms depending on the relationship with the recipient. In other words, if you write a letter to your friend, obviously it's not going to sound as formal as it would be to your grandmother or your grandfather or the principal of the school. Yours should always start with a capital letter, but sincerely should have small letter and no other punctuation should be used. One's surname is unnecessary if you write to a family member or a close friend. I would assume that they know who you are. For example, yours sincerely, Tapelo. Check again. Yours, capitalized, sincerely, undercase. You don't capitalize the word sincerely. And then following right after that, your name. Let's take a look at formal letters. There are different kinds of formal letters, not only 3. There are actually more. So let's see. Let's start with the green one right at the top. Letter of application. If you want to apply for a job, you might use that one. A letter of thanks. You visited friends or family, or you had a matric farewell and you would like to thank the committee for the wonderful matric farewell that you had. A letter of complaint. If you want to complain about a service or a product or something, then you would use the letter of complaint. A letter of sympathy. Somebody died, and you are writing a letter to that person to share your sympathy or condolences with that person. A letter of request, and then last but not least, the letter to the press. Before writing your letter, read the topic of the letter to which you want to respond very carefully. Think about the tone and the language of the letter you will write. Identify your audience, in other words, who is this letter addressed to, and the purpose of the letter in order to determine the type of letter that you will write. Think about or plan your response carefully. The following aspects must always be included in the format of a formal letter. Number 1, the sender's address. Who's the sender? You, who's writing the letter. The recipient's address, the person that you are addressing the letter to. The salutation. The subject heading. In other words, that is like the reason for the letter. And then your ending. There are 3 related content paragraphs between the subject heading and the ending. Avoid slang and colloquial language. Now, there's a slight difference. Slang, as we have discussed before, would be something like I wanna, gonna, ain't. All of these, all the language that you might hear on an American program, which is not standard English. Colloquial language is very closely related to that, but it is actually limited to certain areas or certain groups of people. You would not use the same vocabulary with your friends as you would with your parents, for example, or with teachers. And that is what we refer to as colloquial language. Contractions, yet again, can't, cannot, won't, will not. Abbreviations and acronyms. ASAP, for example, ECT, etc. Very often the word, the contraction is spelt wrongly anyway, or the abbreviation. Unsubstantiated accusations and threats. That's usually when you complain about something. You can't threaten a company. You might rather want to suggest a possible solution. That includes emotional language and sarcasm. Let's take a look at the sender's address. It is the same as the friendly letter. The number first, the name of the street, and then street or avenue capitalized. Johannesburg or Pretoria, the code, and then the date. Remember, the date is not numeric or mathematical. It is the written out one, 23 August or 29 November 2022. Or PO Box 634, Johannesburg 1502, and then the date again. Please pay attention to the capitalization of PO Box. The recipient's address. Then we refer to the person we are addressing the letter to. The manager, Johannesburg Metro Municipality, PO Box 333, whatever the address is, and very often that might be given to you in your topic, or you can create one as long as you know who you are addressing it to. Johannesburg 1502. Remember, you don't write the date there. Salutation follows on the left-hand side after a line has been skipped. Use a formal greeting, dear sir or dear madam. If you know the name or the surname, actually not the name, the surname of that person, you would say, dear Dr. Jones. Do not use dear sir / madam. Don't let the marker choose which one of the recipients or the greetings they want to accept. So it's either dear sir or dear madam. Then you skip a line before you write a subject heading. Subject heading is a one-liner that summarizes the content of the letter. In other words, the purpose. Underline the subject heading. For example, complaint, service delivery. Paragraph 1 would refer to the reason for the letter. Very brief, to the point. Remember, you are writing to a person in business, and they don't have time to kind of work out what you are trying to say. You must be short and to the point. Paragraph 2, you will expand the reason for writing this letter. Each aspect of the complaint needs to be mentioned and clearly explained with evidence. For example, you are writing to the municipality about the state of the general park in your area. Then you would expand on that and say that you visited the park recently and that you came across a lot of paper and bottles and things, and there were children around playing, and that could be a danger. And then in paragraph 3, you make suggestions for improving the situation. Very short, very to the point. Your ending, the most commonly used one, is yours faithfully, uppercase Y, capital letter, and F is in lowercase or a small letter. Sign your name, then print your name and title beneath. It's very important your signature must be between yours faithfully and the initials and surname. For example, yours faithfully, there's your signature, and J.S. Low. So let's quickly recap. There is the sender's address on the right in block form, the recipient's address on the left in block form, the line open, dear sir or dear madam, your heading line or your purpose for the letter, and then complaint service delivery, for example. Remember the line between your salutation and that one, and then you write the rest of your letter. The next one we are looking at is an obituary. Remember that an obituary is a notice of the passing of someone known by the target audience, by the reader. It also includes the cause of death as well as funeral arrangements. The features of an obituary, the following must be included: the full name of the deceased, his date of birth, the place of birth, date of death, and place where he or she lived before death. Key survivors mentioned, relevant tribute, and date and time and place of the funeral. So how do we write an obituary? You read the question carefully. Determine who the person is that has passed away and how you are related to that person. Paragraph 1 would include the personal details of the person that has passed on. The full name and surname, date of birth written out in words, same as the address, date of death written out in words, where the person was living at the time of his death, the name of the organization that writes this obituary, for example, the church, team, community, the group. Paragraph 2, you write the tribute to the person. Start off by describing how you are related to the deceased, describe the traits of the deceased which made an impression, and how this person changed the lives of the people he or she came into contact with. Refer to all the good things he or she has done and how these actions benefited others. A tribute is something that you say to show that you respect and admire someone or something. So what is the focus of the tribute? Start off describing how you related, the traits of the deceased, and then all the good things he or she has done in the community or has benefited others. Paragraph 3 will refer to the people left behind, and there you can mention by name. He left his wife and 3 children. You can name them by name. Include the date, time, and the place of the funeral. Add a last word of condolences. Remember, use only the appropriate language that you are assessed on, which is English. Therefore, there shall be no rubala khotsotao or any vernacular, because remember, this is still English that is being tested. A tribute is contextually based tribute. It should not be written in the first person. Then we move on to the dialogue or the interview. A dialogue is a conversation between 2 or more people. It is a record of exchanges as they occur. It's like a conversation directly from the speaker's point of view. An interview would be similar to a dialogue, but the major difference is that in an interview, the one speaker probes the other by asking questions, whereas in a dialogue, the speakers engage in a conversation. Make sure that when you read the topic, that you understand the difference between the two and that you are writing the correct one. When you write a dialogue or an interview, sketch a scenario before you start writing. Remember when you did the play, at some stage in your life, you might have seen a play or must have read a play. Those are the things that they give you a background on, where this is taking place and the characters that are involved. Write the names of the characters on the left side of the page and then use a colon after the name. It's always a good idea to draw a very thin pencil line so that it's nice and blocked, so that the reader knows exactly where what is going. Use a new line to indicate each speaker. Avoid using long greetings and introductions. Respond to the brief in the question, so be focused when you answer this question. Stage directions can be given in brackets before the words are spoken. Now, stage directions might be something like how a character is standing, or how they move across the stage, and that is where you also include those descriptive words. Let's move on to section C, the shorter transactionals. Now, section C, remember to always start this section on a new page. I'll refer you back and back and back. Section A, you start on a new page, you complete it, you do your planning, you write your final response, you draw a line right through. Next page, section B, and then you write down your number that you've selected and also the type of transactional writing that you are going to do. Section C, new page. Top of the page, you will be expected to answer only one question in this section. 3 questions will be set, 1 from each of the given categories. So let's take a look at category A. That could be an advertisement, an invitation, a flyer, or a poster. I want to stop there for a minute and just remind you that you will not be awarded marks for pretty coloring and pretty pictures that you add. Remember, it is still writing that is being assessed. So the words are the important bits, whether you've included the necessary information. That goes for all 4 of those, the advertisement, the invitation, the flyer, and the poster. You don't have to bring your coloring pencils with. Category B would refer to diary entry or a short message system or an SMS, as you might know it. WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, what is that other one? Twitter, those are all short messages. And then category C, you get instructions and directions. Let's take a look at section C. Yet again, you choose only one shorter transactional text from the ones given. The body of your response should be between 80 and 100 words in length. Write down the number and the heading of the text you have selected or chosen. For example, 3.1 invitation card. No marks are awarded for pictures, sketches, etc., as I've indicated earlier. Remember to plan, edit, and proofread your text, clearly indicating planning and crossing it out before you submit your question paper. Let's go back again to the planning, editing, and proofreading. And I refer you back when we talked about the essay. You follow the same pattern as you did with the essay. You brainstorm, then you analyze your ideas, you put your ideas together, short and sweet and to the point. You write your final presentation, you edit it and you proofread it. Remember, chances are you won't be able to write the first draft and then write a final. Your shorter transactional text will be assessed according to a 20-mark rubric. Pay particular attention to format, language, and register. Let's take a look at the invitation. Read the question carefully and identify the subject of the invitation. Is it for a wedding? Is it for a graduation? Is it for a birthday? And there you might also want to focus on the target audience. Include the subject of the invitation. And then you include the date, when this thing will take place, this party or whatever you are referring to, the venue, where is it happening, and then also the time at which this occasion will start. Include an RSVP, contact details to confirm attendance. Also include the dress code. Is it formal? Is it informal? Is it smart casual? Or if you want to attach a specific theme to it, you will also be able to include that. And then you might include any other relevant information that you feel is pertinent to this. Let's take a look at the diary entry. A diary portrays the daily events and feelings of a person. I don't know if you keep a diary. Girls tend to be more keen on writing notes at the end of the day, just to make sense of what is happening in their lives. But remember, it's not limited to girls only. A diary is a good thing to just unravel whatever your day brought you and think about it and sort it out. Very often our problems are solved that way. It is a personal piece of writing where your experience, emotions, thoughts are recorded and provide the opportunity to just pour everything out on paper. You know, that is like a best friend without ears and eyes. You just jot down your ideas, you close it, and you put it away for your eyes only. So how do we go about writing it? The day and the date, or both, must be written at the top of the entry. Provide a salutation. You may provide a specific name. You can give your diary a name such as, I know there was one, Dear Kitty, Dear Best Friend, Dear Bubbles, anything that you can relate to. The entry needs to be in the first person. Remember, this is a personal piece of writing, so you need to focus on first person writing. The diary entry needs to be written in the present tense unless events have already happened. Then obviously you would refer to something in the past. Use simple sentences and short paragraphs without giving up on expression and description. Use emotive language to express opinions and feelings. Informal language may be used here, but please avoid slang and profanities or swearing, even if it's only for your eyes. A couple of exam tips for the diary entry. Make sure of the number of diary entries that you are required to write. Very often the question will dictate to you whether it's an event. Let's use an example. You are writing in your diary about your matric farewell. Now, even if you are male, I think sometimes you look forward to your matric farewell and you are dreaming about the girl that you're going to ask to the matric farewell, or you're dreaming about the boy that's going to ask you to the matric farewell, or if you're one of those girls that are straightforward, you might even ask a boy to the matric farewell. Now, a lot of planning goes into that, and you might want to write your diary entries on that. Very often, if there are two dates, one would refer to before the event and one would refer to after the event. And you must be very careful. The instructions of the question will tell you exactly what is required. The number of words for the diary entry, yet again, 80 to 100 words in total, regardless of the number of entries. So in total, if there are 2 diary entries or if they require 3 diary entries, depending on the instructions, you will still have 80 to 100 words. So think very carefully before you write. It must be written in the first person. Remember, it's a personal response to what is happening in your day. Use words that describe feelings or emotions. The language should be simple and informal. As I said, you can use informal language, but avoid slang and profanities. Slang, no, gonna, wanna, ain't, okay, bro, bra, all of those words that we often like to use among friends or even in the privacy of our rooms. The next one that we are going to look at would be directions and instructions. And this is very short and to the point and a very pointy form. If you want to tell somebody where you live because they are coming to visit you, you must be very clear on how to get that person there. You don't want them to get all lost. So we use directions to tell someone how to get somewhere. How do we write directions? We need to be concise. We need to be clear. The directions must be in chronological order. Imagine somebody explains to you how to get to their house. You would love to have step 1, step 2, step 3. To get from here to there, you turn left, you turn right, you go down the street, you cross the street, the intersection. Those are things that you would want to know. Refer to a specific direction. Indicate the distance in meters or kilometers. So you might say 200 meters from the last traffic light, you are going to turn left. Give information on landmarks along the way. What is a landmark? That might refer to petrol station. It might refer to a church or a distinct building in that specific area. Let's take a look at words indicating direction. And it's actually worth memorizing some of these words if you decide to use this or choose this topic. You will see that we start each step with a direction or an action word. Drive or walk down, and then you include the direction. Walk past if you want to indicate whether you have to pass a specific landmark in that area. Follow the signs to. That's another one that you can use. I'm going to go very slow with this because I would love you to write these down, because this is easy marks for you. Walk in an easterly direction. Remember when we go direction, north, east, south, west. If you are like me, I don't go very well with it, but sometimes it helps. Turn left into or turn right into, and then you might refer to the street name. Drive in the direction of, and then very often you can also refer to landmarks that stand out. If there is a tower close by, you might want to refer to that. Or if there is a church spire, the tower of a church, if that is close by, you might want to refer to that. If there is a specific shop close to that area, you might refer to drive in the direction of whatever shop you would like to refer to. Words indicating direction would also include at the second intersection, when you get to a cross, when two roads cross, you might refer to an intersection. That's a grand word to use. Cross over the third set of traffic lights. The road curves to the left or to the right. That indicates direction. Where the road forks, in other words, if you are traveling down a street and that street splits in two, then you need to indicate whether to go left or to go right. Another one that shows a specific building, a landmark. Very often houses are painted interesting colors, or buildings are painted interesting colors, or they have interesting architecture, and you might want to refer to something like that. Please note, the direction may be either in point or paragraph form. The directions must be in the correct chronological order. In other words, you must go step by step from here to there. If you give directions and they're all mixed up, that poor person will never reach his or her destination. Landmarks, distances, and terms must be included. So be as specific as you can. Let's take a look at instructions. We give instructions when we describe how something should be done. When we give instructions, we keep each instruction short and simple. We write each instruction as a step. Have only one main idea per step. Now let's stop there for a second. Instructions could be how to make a cup of coffee, if you want to keep it very basic. Or it could be how to make a good macaroni and cheese. So it could be something like a recipe, even though it's not a recipe. It could also be how to fix a tire, or how to exchange a plug on a lamp. That would also refer to instructions. And there it's very important to remember the technical aspects. And you must actually know, I know how to change a tire. In secret, I've never changed a tire in my life. I can tell you how to do it, but the practice is not there. I have changed a plug on a light before, but I will not be able to do it so specifically. I think my instructions might be a little bit jumbled. So here it's important to be technical and to be quite clear. Start in each instruction with a verb. The same with the directions. You start each instruction with a verb. And then you number every instruction. So the main difference between the instructions and the directions is directions could be in paragraph form or it could be in point form. But the instructions definitely should be in point form. Write the instructions in sequence. Yet again, it's a process, so you need to remember, go step by step. Remember the following. Analyze each topic. I'll actually refer to it as unpacking the topic. So you highlight what it is that you need to write, who is involved, what is the reason for writing this, and then the end. Right. So you need to be very careful when you unpack this topic. And I want to reiterate, remember that paper that you receive is yours. You have worked 12 years to write that paper. It is yours. So you are allowed to highlight on that question paper. You are allowed to underline or encircle on that paper. It is a working document, so use it. It doesn't have to go back home all neatly, or go back to the school, or go back to the class all neatly. You must work on it. scratch out, highlight, underline. Those things are extremely important, and they will actually help you to focus and to plan your activities properly. Then, very important, the length of the writing. You must try and read and adhere to the instructions. Sometimes they penalize you for writing too long and they stop reading at some point. Other times they might read the whole thing, but just remember, the more you write, the more mistakes you tend to make. So you actually penalize yourself more than anything else. Slang language. It's a big no-no. The use of slang language is not allowed at all. Slang language, let me remind you, gonna, wanna, ain't, all these Americanisms. And then also profanities, swearing, swear words that sometimes is part of your general vocabulary. Very, very, very careful about that. Do not use a noun and a pronoun in the same sentence. The boy, he. Don't do that. The boy, and then you go on, what did he do? The boy kicked the ball. You don't say the boy, he kicked the ball. Formats. Use the correct formats in section B and C. And let me tell you something. It is definitely possible to get full marks for your questions in section B and section C. Number one, the formats should be correct. Number two, if you analyze the topic properly and you answer the question and include whatever details is required in the question, you will easily get full marks. Contractions, remember that contractions actually is used in spoken language, and therefore we do not allow it in written language, especially in a question paper that is regarded as formal writing. Your sentences, yet again, avoid using too long sentences. Remember, they become tedious and you lose focus the longer you write. And if you write your whatever piece of writing you're doing, shorter transactional, longer transactional, or your essay, when you go through editing, in other words, when you read through your task again, I want you to read the sentences and decide for yourself, does this really make sense? And be honest with yourself. Because if you doubt what you wanted to say there, imagine what the reader would think. Cancel your rough draft or your rough work. It happens so often that a marker starts marking your first draft or your first try, and then later on realize, oh, here is a neat one, and then they have to repeat the process again, and then they lose time, and that is very difficult for them. So be nice to them and cancel your rough work or your first draft. While we're talking about neatness, try and keep your handwriting as regular as possible and obviously as neat as possible. The markers are getting really tired and you don't have a clue whether your paper will be marked on day 1 or on day 10. And I can promise you that makes a huge difference to the marker. If your writing is neat, they actually feel that they would like to credit you for your writing. I would want to wish you good luck for this exam